A Google L5 ML engineer interview. 3 years of GPT-4 experience on the resume. The interviewer asks one question. What actually happens when your prompt hits the context window limit? The candidate freezes. 90% of candidates freeze. You are about to be in the 10%. Here's what makes that question so brutal. It's not a trick. It's not obscure. It's a question about the single most important constraint in every LLM system running in production right now. And most people who've been building with these models for years have never stopped to understand the actual mechanics underneath. Today we fix that. 3 levers every interviewer at Google, OpenAI and Anthropic pulls to separate practitioners from people who've just used the chat interface. Tokens, context windows, temperature. Let's start with the question that ends interviews in 60 seconds. Explain what a token is, not from the docs, in your own words. That's a real prompt from ML role interviews at Google and OpenAI. And the most common answer interviewers hear? Some version of a word or a piece of a word. Interviewers mark that as a student answer. It's not wrong exactly, but it tells them you've read the marketing page, not the source code. Here's what a passing answer sounds like. A token is the unit of probability. The model never sees letters. It never sees words. It sees integer IDs, numbers pulled from a vocabulary lookup table. GPT-4 uses an encoding called CL100K_base, which has exactly 100,277 tokens in its vocabulary. Every piece of text gets mapped to a sequence of those integers. The model predicts the next integer based on the probability distribution over all 100,000 options. That's it. That's the whole game. You can verify this yourself. Open Python, import tick token, encode the string hello world. You get back 2 numbers, 9,906 and 1,917. That's not an abstraction. That's the exact integer sequence GPT-4 processes. Now, why does this matter in production? Because your cost, your latency, and your context budget are all denominated in tokens, not characters, not words, tokens. ChatGPT is 3 tokens. Tokenization is 4 tokens. Those numbers directly affect what you pay. The reason tokens look the way they do comes from an algorithm called byte pair encoding, BPE, the algorithm. You start with every character. You find the most frequent pair. You merge them. This is why unbelievable might compress to fewer tokens. But here's the interview trap. Add a space before unbelievable, you get a completely different token. White space is part of the token identity. Here's the interview question. How many tokens is a 1,000-word essay? The answer is roughly 750 tokens for English prose. 1 token is approximately 0.75 words. But the moment you leave English prose, that ratio breaks. A 1,000-word Python file is closer to 1,200 to 1,500 tokens. Candidates who cite word counts get flagged immediately. Interviewers know you've never profiled a real production prompt. Now let's talk about context windows. The budget you are always spending. The total token budget. Input plus output combined. GPT-4o gives you 128,000 tokens. Claude 3.5 Sonnet 200,000. Gemini 1.5 Pro up to 1 million. These numbers sound enormous until you start stuffing in system prompts, conversation history, retrieved documents, and tool outputs. Then they disappear fast. Back to that interview question, what happens when you hit the limit? The real answer? The model does not crash gracefully. On OpenAI, you get a 400 error. Some providers implement a sliding window that silently drops the oldest tokens. Neither of those behaviors is safe in production. You have no idea what got dropped. There's a research finding you need to know. Liu et al. At Stanford 2023, they called it lost in the middle. Accuracy drops to 55% in the center. Information at the start or end, around 95%. The model is not reading your context like a human. Position matters enormously. So what does the practitioner answer sound like? I profile usage with TikToken. I set a hard ceiling at 80% to preserve headroom. I use RAG for large documents. That answer names a tool, gives a number, names a failure mode, describes a strategy. That is what passing sounds like. Now temperature, the most misunderstood dial in ML interviews. Temperature does not control creativity. That's the casual description. Here's the mechanical one. Temperature scales the logits before they get passed through the softmax function that converts them to probabilities. At temperature 0, you pick the highest probability token. At temperature 1, you sample directly. At temperature 2, the distribution flattens. Output gets chaotic. Here's the interview question that separates seniors. Is temperature equals 0 deterministic? Most people say yes. The correct answer is technically no. GPU floating point operations are non-deterministic at scale due to the order of parallel operations. OpenAI calls it nearly deterministic, not fully. Knowing that is a senior signal. Now top P, also called nucleus sampling. Different from temperature, temperature reshapes the distribution. Top P truncates it. You take the smallest set of tokens whose cumulative probability adds up to P. Throw out everything else. At top P of 0.9, you're sampling from the top 90%. The key thing, temperature and top P interact. Running both is redundant. Pick one primary control. If you can't explain why, don't use both. Real production example. Harvey AI, the legal platform, runs at low temperature, around 0.2 for summarization. Legal work needs consistency. Creative writing needs 0.9. Match the task. Now the 3 mistakes that cost candidates the offer. Mistake 1. Naming models instead of mechanics. Brand preference is not engineering judgment. Mistake 2. Ignoring failure modes. Not knowing what happens when context is exceeded or assuming t equals 0 is deterministic. Production engineers have hit these walls. Mistake 3. No numbers. Tokens are roughly words is not an answer. Cite CL100K_base. Cite 128K context windows. These numbers signal you've actually built something. Let's bring it together. 3 levers. Tokens, the unit of cost. Context windows, a budget with a dangerous middle. Temperature, a distribution shaper. Your answer framework. State the mechanic precisely. Give one real number. Name one failure mode. Describe how you handle it in production. 4 moves every time. This Saturday, EtherStack AI's quiz goes live, and it is not multiple choice. We're pulling 8 real interview questions from Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic ML prep threads. You'd have to type your answers like you're actually sitting across from the interviewer. No hints, no options. Show up ready. I'm Vardhan, EtherStack AI. See you Saturday.